The movie begins with a woman named Jess crying while holding her son Tommy, gently calming him down and telling him it was just a nightmare, and there is nothing to be afraid of. That same day, Jess was fixing up the house and cleaning the hallway where things had fallen. While cleaning, she accidentally got something on her clothes, quickly gathered them, put them in the car, then took her son and drove away to the yacht. At the marina, Sally and the group had already arrived, and Greg warmly welcomed them. Sally came with her husband Downey and her friend Heather. Shortly after, Victor and Jess showed up. Greg greeted Jess and asked if she was okay. She seemed distracted and not quite herself. Strangely, Tommy was not with her. Once everyone boarded the yacht, they set sail into open water. During the trip, Jess suddenly woke up from a dream where she saw herself lying on a beach. Heather noticed she had been having a nightmare and tried to comfort her. Jess admitted she had a bad dream but couldn't remember the details. On deck, Greg asked Victor if Jess was doing okay. Victor said he had asked her about Tommy, and she told him he was at school, even though it was Saturday. Greg found that odd but brushed it off, saying Tommy was a special kid and maybe his school had weekend activities. Jess went up on deck with Heather and Greg, who seemed especially attentive to her and let her try steering the yacht. In the background, Sally encouraged Heather to get closer to Greg and spoke badly about Jess. Later, Victor raised the mainsail to increase speed. During their conversation, Greg told Jess he had invited her the day before because he wanted to spend time with her, but Jess looked confused and didn't remember anything he was talking about. Suddenly, the wind completely stopped, which shocked both Victor and Greg since they had never experienced anything like that before. To make things worse, a massive dark cloud started moving toward them. Alarmed, Greg radioed the Coast Guard for help, but the signal became distorted. Through the static, they heard a woman's voice begging for help, saying there was a killer on her ship. Greg tried to get her coordinates, but she stopped responding, and all further attempts to reach her failed. Heather then shouted to warn Greg about the powerful storm closing in. Moments later, the storm hit hard. Violent waves smashed into the yacht, and although Victor and Greg tried to control it, the storm severely damaged the vessel. Everyone survived the wreck except Heather, who was separated from the group and disappeared. They searched for her but couldn't find any trace. While grieving her disappearance, they suddenly spotted a massive ocean liner approaching them. They waved and screamed to get its attention and saw a shadowy figure standing on the upper deck watching them. The group decided to board the ship despite Jess feeling uneasy about it. Once inside, they were shocked to discover the ship was completely empty, which only increased Jess's anxiety. With no one responding, they decided to head to the bridge to find the captain. Jess appeared distant, as if she were remembering something. Greg tried to reassure her. They walked through long corridors filled with identical rooms, and at one intersection Jess felt a strong sense of déjà vu, like she had been there before. Greg explained that large ships often have identical layouts. In another section of the ship, they found an old photograph dated 1932 showing a ship that looked exactly like the one they were on, leaving them confused. As they discussed the ship's name, they heard the sound of a key dropping somewhere nearby. They rushed to investigate and found a key on the floor. Jess was stunned to realize it was her key. The others were confused and even wondered if she was joking. She showed them her locket containing Tommy's photo and suggested maybe Heather had dropped it, but Downey wasn't convinced. In the main dining hall, although no one was around, the tables were filled with fresh food. Victor started eating. Greg asked him what time it was, and Victor said 11:30. But when Jess looked at the ship's wall clock, it showed 8:15. Sally continued calling out for Heather, but Greg stopped her and began giving instructions about what to do next. During the discussion, Jess thought she saw someone in the distance who quickly disappeared. Without hesitation, Victor went after the figure. Sally asked Jess if she had seen Heather, but Jess wasn't sure. When Greg returned, Jess went with him to search for a way off the ship, leaving the others behind in the main hall. As they walked, Jess warned Greg that Victor might be in danger, but he didn't take her seriously. He led her into an open room where they found words written in blood across the mirror that read, "Go to the theater." At the same time, Victor was searching for the mysterious figure. When they regrouped, Greg still didn't take what they had seen seriously, and suggested it might just be some kind of prank by the ship's crew. But Jess was convinced that something supernatural was happening. She decided to split up from Greg and look for a boat she could use to escape. As Sally and Downey walked through the ship, they noticed bloodstains along the floor. Sally followed the trail until she reached the theater. Meanwhile, Jess returned to the main lounge to meet them, but they weren't there. She was shocked to see that the food on the table had started to rot. Suddenly, she heard a noise in the distance, and quickly hid behind one of the pillars. Victor appeared, badly injured and covered in blood, walking toward her. Jess tried to help him, but out of nowhere he grabbed her by the throat and choked her until she fell to the ground. With no other option, she reached behind him and pressed her fingers into his wound. Victor collapsed, and moments later he died. Shortly after, Jess heard a gunshot coming from the theater and ran there immediately. Inside, she found Greg badly wounded by a gunshot. She was stunned when Sally confronted her and accused her of shooting him. Jess tried to explain that she had been with Victor, who had also been attacked, but that only made Sally and Downey more suspicious. As they were accusing her, someone started shooting at them inside the theater. Jess saw the killer wearing a cloth over their head. The masked figure shot Downey again, killing him. Sally went into shock and became an easy target. Without thinking, Jess ran, leaving the others behind. The killer fired at her but missed. In the kitchen, Jess grabbed a knife and hid behind the stove. Luckily, the killer didn't see her and walked away. After he left, Jess searched for a way out but discovered there were no extra lifeboats. While she was looking around, the killer struck her from behind with the rifle, knocking her down. She begged him not to shoot her. Strangely, he hesitated. Jess took advantage of the moment, pushed the rifle away, and managed to overpower him in a struggle. She escaped to the lower deck. The killer kept chasing her, but his shots were off target. When he ran out of bullets, he threw the rifle at her. On the lower level, Jess grabbed a fire axe and rolled a round metal object to distract him, but he still figured out where she was. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and fought him again. In the end, she defeated the killer, who begged her to listen. That's when she realized the killer had a woman's voice and was saying she had to kill them all. Jess didn't listen and struck with the axe, killing the masked figure. Shaken by everything that had happened, Jess entered the bridge and heard music playing on repeat. She found a gramophone that kept restarting itself. She looked into the mirror and suddenly heard screams for help coming from outside. When she looked out, she was stunned to see her group, including another version of herself, on the overturned yacht. This time, Jess was on the ship looking down at them, the opposite of what had happened before. She had no idea what was going on. Panicked, she hid as the new group boarded the ship. While hiding, she heard the new Jess say the exact same words she had said when she first arrived, and they followed the same steps as before. Jess couldn't understand how the events were repeating. Out of frustration, she dropped the key on the floor just like the killer had done earlier. The new group heard it, forcing her to run and hide again. As she moved through the ship, she heard running water in the same room where she had once stood with Greg. Confused and overwhelmed, she chose to hide and let events play out the same way. This time, the other Jess saw her, and the original Jess took on the role of the killer. Outside, Jess saw seagulls feeding on Downey's body and went closer to check. Suddenly, she heard Victor shouting, looking for someone. When he saw her, he was shocked. He had no idea there were two Jesses. She quickly tried to explain the situation, but he didn't believe her. She attempted to show him the body the birds had been eating, but it had vanished as if it had never been there. Victor thought she was losing her mind and refused to listen. In her desperation to make him understand, she accidentally pushed him into a sharp metal object, causing a severe head wound. Instead of helping him, she panicked and ran away, repeating the killer's actions. In another part of the ship, she heard Greg and the other Jess talking in the dressing room. Jess was exhausted, and voices echoed inside her head. She looked down and found a crumpled piece of paper that read, "If they board, kill them all." Under the influence of the voices, she wrote the same message herself. She then entered the next room and picked up a rifle. The voices wouldn't stop, so she tried to silence them. As she sat there, she noticed her locket with Tommy's picture hanging from a pipe. When she took it down, she discovered many identical lockets underneath. Shocked, she dropped it, and it fell onto a pile of others. That's when Jess finally realized she was trapped in a time loop. She remembered Tommy and grabbed bullets from a box, searching for a way to break the cycle. She found Victor bleeding and explained that she hadn't meant to hurt him. They approached the main lounge where the other Jess was repeating the same actions as before. At that exact moment, the original Jess stepped in, trying to finally break the loop. Victor finally believed her when he saw two Jesses standing in front of him. Jess aimed the rifle at her other self but couldn't pull the trigger. While talking to Victor, she suddenly heard gunfire from the theater and found Greg badly injured. Once again, they accused her when they saw her holding the rifle. She pushed Sally out of the way to save her from a bullet, and finally they realized she had saved them. But then another masked killer appeared. Jess tried to explain everything, but they wanted a logical explanation. Realizing logic didn't apply anymore, she handed the rifle to Downey and warned him never to trust anyone. She returned to the main lounge, only to find Victor gone. Following the trail of blood outside, she began to suspect he might have fallen off the ship. At the same time, Downey was attacked in the hallway after hearing a strange noise. The killer revealed herself. It was another version of Jess. She took off the mask and claimed she was the original Jess. At first, Downey doubted the blood-covered Jess, but eventually she convinced him. Jess returned to where Downey had been, but she couldn't find them. She screamed to get their attention, but the blood-stained Jess told them to ignore her and follow instead. They went with her into a room, unaware of the tragedy waiting for them. Jess stabbed Downey multiple times before Sally managed to run, but the blood-covered Jess chased her and stabbed her as well. The other Jess ran toward them after hearing Sally scream, but Sally assumed she was the killer and fled, hiding inside the radio room. Sally called for help, repeating the same distress message Greg had heard earlier over the radio. Before she could hear a response, she left when she sensed Jess getting closer. Jess heard Greg speaking on the other line and tried to reach him, but he couldn't hear her. When Jess went upstairs, she was horrified to see multiple versions of Sally's body. The wounded Sally was still lying nearby. Jess tried to calm her down, but Sally no longer trusted her and believed Jess had completely lost her mind. Down below, Jess saw her other self killing the blood-covered Jess. She told Sally she would come back and asked her to wait, but Sally died shortly after from blood loss. When Jess heard the next wave of events starting again, she rushed down and saw the boat sinking, the same fate repeating itself just like before. She sat down and came up with a new idea. She went to the ship's engine room and tried sabotaging it, damaging parts one after another, but nothing changed. Later that same day, Jess saw another version of herself talking to Victor just like before. She tried to convince him, but accidentally pushed him into a sharp metal object, causing him to bleed. After that version of her left, Jess approached Victor again and reassured him not to be afraid, telling him she knew how to save them. She then went upstairs and found Downey's old body covered in blood. She dragged the body out of the bathroom and used his blood to write a warning on the wall. Then she threw Downey's and Greg's old bodies into the ocean. After that, she met the new Downey and Sally. When Downey asked about Greg, she told them Greg had said to go to the theater. At the same time, she grabbed a rifle and some clothes, covered her face, and approached her friends. She saw a new version of herself leaving her conversation with Greg and heading toward the theater with him. Jess aimed the rifle at Greg. He tried to calm her down, explaining that they had just arrived on the ship and that no one else was there, they could simply leave. While trying to reassure her, he noticed the shoes she was wearing and realized it really was Jess. Confused, he asked what she was doing. She replied that she didn't want him to see her face. Jess said she wanted all the versions to die to create a new time loop. She planned to wait below deck and stop them from ever boarding the ship. After explaining, she apologized and struck Greg with the rifle, knocking him down. Sally and Downey saw the chaotic scene and screamed in shock while Jess fired at them. The new Jess managed to escape, and when the original Jess tried to shoot her, she skillfully dodged the bullets. The two versions fought fiercely. The original Jess chased the new one, firing shots. Suddenly, the roles reversed, and the original Jess found herself in the position of the blood-covered Jess. The new Jess escaped again, and another fight broke out. Just like before, the original Jess couldn't defeat her. The new Jess told her she had to kill her friends if she ever wanted to go home. In the end, the original Jess fell into the ocean. She later woke up on a beach and explored until she reached a road with passing cars. She ran home. When she arrived, she looked through the window and saw her son Tommy drawing. She was confused when she suddenly heard her own voice and saw another version of herself carrying laundry just like she had before leaving, yelling at Tommy. He accidentally knocked over his paint cup, mirroring what had happened earlier. Jess hit him again and cleaned up the spilled paint. Seeing this, Jess snapped. She rang the doorbell, grabbed a hammer from the yard, and struck her other self without hesitation. Tommy witnessed everything and panicked, so she comforted him with the same words she had used at the beginning. The devastated Jess then got into the car with Tommy and drove toward the yacht, the Triangle, to reunite with Greg and the others. On the way, she accidentally hit a seagull and tossed it onto the beach. When she looked around, she noticed multiple dead seagulls in the same spot, a sign that the loop had started again, and she still hadn't escaped it. She got back into the car and continued driving. Tommy became frightened after seeing blood on the windshield. Jess tried to calm him down, but it was too late. They crashed into a truck. Sadly, Tommy died in the accident, and Jess was severely injured. She stood at a distance, staring at the tragic scene. A taxi driver approached her and told her no one could bring her son back. He offered to take her to the harbor. When she arrived, she saw Victor walking toward the yacht. He asked about Tommy, and the Jess trapped in the time loop replied that her son was at school. Since Jess had no memory of what had happened before, the cycle began again. Greg welcomed her aboard the yacht, and the group prepared to set sail once more, unaware of the nightmare that was about to repeat. The movie ends here. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.